Welcome to our webinar today on the age of the agentic web. Wow, it sounds like so fun and futuristic, but it's happening now. We'll just give everyone about 10 to 15 more seconds to join us. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. So you'll see that there's a chat. Feel free to put in the chat, what city are you joining us from? Mark and I and Jasmine are all in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, right inside of Schema App's headquarters. Looks like we have some others from Canada. Justin from Kelowna, also some Vancouverites, awesome. Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Carolina, Buenos Aires, love it. Denver, Colorado, awesome. We're super excited to be bringing you some pretty cutting edge content today about how you can think forward, how you can prepare your enterprise for the agentic web. Throughout the session, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will be watching that and we'll either jump in and ask the presenter the question at that time, or we're going to reserve the last 15 minutes in order to answer everybody's questions. So just put them in there, ask them. We love questions here at Schema App, gets us thinking and allows us to kind of evolve how we're thinking about things as well. All right, we're 2 minutes after. With no further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. My name is Martha Van Berkel, and this is my knowledge graph. And I'm super excited because we're going to talk a lot about knowledge graphs today and sort of their contribution to this agentic or age of agents. And so it explains who I am and how I'm connected or my relationships to other things in the world. So you can see at the bottom, when it's not snowing, I love to spend my time on the water as a rower in a single or in a double scull. I do have a technical background. I went to MIT and Queens for engineering. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Schema App, and I had a great opportunity to grow up in enterprise. And so I spent 14 years at Cisco. And during my time there, I really saw how the enterprise struggled with agility and innovation. And that's a lot of what we brought into how we designed Schema App to really help enterprises be agile and be innovative. I am Canadian. And a fun fact about me is I used to drive this beautiful red car. It's a 1965 Austin Healey Sprite. And my actual car was in the movie called Losing Chase that Kevin Bacon directed. So hopefully you're having a smile. You're like, yes, I can now win the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. And we love using this as a way to explain schema markup and what we do, because that inferencing that you just did to figure out that you are 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon is the same thing AI and search is doing when it crawls your website and understands how all your entities are connected. Well, speaking of entities, let me introduce my colleague, Jasmine. Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martha. So this is my knowledge graph. It describes me as an entity. I also work here at Schema App, and I'm one of the product managers. I'm also Canadian, and I'm an alumni of the University of Guelph, where I worked on the Links project. So I know quite a bit about ontologies. But ontologies is a thing that exists in philosophy and in information science. So I've used entity linking to clarify that the ontologies I know about are strictly within the information science sense. Please don't ask me anything about philosophy. Don't really want to talk about that, but I do love talking about information science ontologies. And at the bottom of my knowledge graph, you'll see I have a colleague relationship that connects me to an entity who is called Mark Van Berkel.
Hi, Jasmine, Martha, and everyone watching. My name is Mark, and I am the co-founder of Schema App along with Martha, and I am the CTO here. I'm also Canadian and an alumni of the University of Toronto. So I first got into semantic technologies at the University of Toronto back in 2005. And so along those lines, I also did research for SAP Labs back in 2007. And that was really the kind of the foundation of a lot of the things that I know about and kind of bring to Schema App around semantic technologies. And then I also went back for an MBA to figure out how should we put these things to use. And so I'm just proud to be here today and looking forward to chatting.
So we have a kick-ass panel. I'm excited for you to all share your insights. And so today we're going to talk about a couple different areas. We're going to talk about the evolving value of schema markup and sort of its role in the world of agents. We're then going to talk about how to build a high quality content knowledge graph. We really wanted to make sure this was actionable, something that you could take. And so Jasmine's going to walk us through that. And then Mark's going to answer the question of what's required for agent readiness. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. I first want to let you know, like, this webinar is being brought to you by Schema App, and we are a scalable end-to-end schema markup and content knowledge graph solution. We work with marketing teams primarily in enterprise. You can see some of the customers that we work with. We're really, really proud that we not just deliver amazing semantic technology, but we also partner that with an amazing customer experience led by our customer success team. And so our goal is to journey you through this world of the complexity of schema markup and the complexity of building content knowledge graph with ease and joy. And we're also really proud. Over the last quarter, we also achieved our SOC 2 Type 2 certification, which really sort of shows our investment in enterprise level security. When we think of schema markup here at Schema App, we really think of it as unlocking value beyond just SEO. And so we call this our value house. And you can see at the very bottom is schema markup. This is sort of the world we've been living in for a long time where we're optimizing, page by page, maybe optimizing for a rich result. But where the sort of unlock comes, where the value unlock comes, is if we can go from schema markup to a content knowledge graph. And we do this by embracing and adopting entity linking, internal and external, and also organizing those entity in a robust taxonomy. I'm super excited because that's what Jasmine's going to talk about today. When we build this content knowledge graph, we unlock value across SEO, some of the things you know today, rich results, non-branded queries, AI overviews, content, which is content insights, but then also an AI readiness. And so this sort of journey of sort of preparing this high quality knowledge graph is what we really want to share with you today and talk about how it's more than just agents, but this next phase of the agentic web that's really happening now. And I always like to kind of reflect back on this article. 24 years ago, right? Tim Berners-Lee, Ora Laszlo, and James Hendler talked about the semantic web and how it was going to allow machines to understand everything that was on the web. And when they understood it, they could execute on tasks for users. And I think the agentic web, as we describe it today, is really that semantic web in motion. It's the fact that we now have agents using that information, using that understanding, and now we're building that architecture, we're building that data that will allow them to execute on not just simple tasks, but quite robust, elegant tasks. And we're seeing this today, whether that be through Google's Agentic Web. They had this announcement on November 13th, where you can actually, in AI mode, go and actually have it do shopping for you, remind you if the prices change, go and actually purchase it for you. Again, sort of this journey that we're now experiencing now, of the Agentic Web. And we're seeing the same coming from OpenAI, where just from that, that chatbot experience, I don't need to go and look at a million different websites going to come together in this elegant experience where I can ask it questions like I was talking to a friend in order to do all my Christmas shopping or sort of, perhaps, execute and book those appointments I need in healthcare or, ask questions about my finance decisions. So we're really, my big message here is that this isn't so futuristic. This is happening now, both from like big tech leaders like Google and also OpenAI and also Microsoft. And so Kevin Scott from Microsoft, he's the CTO there, actually spent some time in May presenting in his keynote about sort of building the open agentic web. And I really want to focus here on the word open because this is what I'm seeing coming from Microsoft is that they want to make sure AI is accessible. And so they're thinking forward and preparing for how do they help organizations do that, play in an open space with standards. And what's really interesting is the same week Kevin Scott made that announcement, they also announced something called NLWeb. Now, NLWeb is a project led by RV Guha. Now, RV Guha Guha is interesting because he's not only the creator of RSS, but also schema.org. And so he was the one that brought the community together to create the vocabulary that Schema App, and again, the SEO world knows so well. Again, an open standard that people could adopt to help machines understand. And now, he's looking at making this, accessible and using NLWeb to really be the open standard on how agents are interacting with websites. And Mark and I had the chance to sit down with Guha and have a conversation and understand better, how this was going to happen. And I think one of the key things is they're looking to schema markup, and I'll say semantic content knowledge graphs, in order to inform the vector database within NLWeb to do this agent readiness. And so, what better evidence that, schema markup is more than just an SEO tactic, but a strategy for agent readiness. And so, again, this comes down to sort of not just optimizing a page with schema markup, but thinking of it as building that data layer, or as we like to refer to as your content knowledge graph. So to make sure everyone's on the same page, a content knowledge graph is a collection of relationships, similar to my introductory slide with Kevin Bacon, defined using a common vocabulary and really defining those relationships. That's sort of the key piece. And when we define those relationships, it can do inferencing, just like you figuring out you can win the Kevin Bacon game. And we believe here at Schema App that your content knowledge graph is that bridge between your brand, what we think of your website today, and AI understanding. And Microsoft has confirmed this. Krishna Medhaven, who leads their Bing team, wrote this article recently that talked about, how do you prepare for AI? And he talks about schema markup as being that data that helps search engines understand, and that what's really important is bringing semantic clarity. And so your content knowledge graph can do that. So let's talk about how that looks like and what that looks like in practical. Jasmine, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk to us a little bit about building that high quality knowledge graph so we can be ready for AI.
Yeah, so what you're going to hear a lot of people talking about is quality as being super essential to getting this stuff right. So how exactly do we build a high quality content knowledge graph? Well, lucky for you, we have a handy dandy 4-point high quality schema markup checklist. We're going to go through each of these steps together so you know exactly what we mean. So you're going to start by defining the pages on your website using types from the schema.org vocabulary to categorize your pages. So what you're looking at here is the Schema App highlighter web page, and that is actually one of our software applications. So I would use the software application type to categorize this web page. And if you were to take a look at the software application page on schema.org's actual website, it's going to give you a definition of what that is. In this case, their definition is literally a software application, super descriptive. But that definition doesn't have to be descriptive because they're also giving us tons of properties we can use to describe our content with more detail. Things like your application category, whether it's available in certain countries, download URLs, etc. So we use these to add depth to our schema markup. You can see here, I've called out the name of my software application, the description. I have a video on this page, a review. And at the very bottom, I actually have an FAQ page. And my software application, that Schema App highlighter, is the subject of that FAQ page. I now have a much more detailed kind of little graph that I've created using this vocabulary to describe the content on this page. So after this, you'll want to focus on breadth. And by breadth, we really mean coverage. You want to make sure that you're implementing schema markup on all the key pages on your website. So this often will look like, products and services you provide, maybe location pages if you have them, your home page, which defines who you are as an organization. Profile pages are another great one, defining the people who work there, what they're experts in. Really, you want to focus on adding markup and categorizing the pages that are most essential to machines understanding who you are and what you do. Once you've got this down, you're then going to focus on connecting, because this is all about the relationships. So this is where you use schema markup to connect entities across your key web pages, but also out to other things externally in the web, and we'll get to that in a moment. But what you can see in this example is I've got my software application in the back, and it's connected to my organization through a creator relationship. And Martha Van Berkel has her own profile page, and she's connected to our organization through a founder relationship. So I can make all of this super clear by declaring this in the structured data that I've added to my web pages. And why do we do this? Well, as Martha mentioned, machines need to be able to infer things to answer questions. And how do they do that? By understanding the relationships between things or defined entities. So Martha had taken us through her connections to Kevin Bacon, and with her sharing that, we were able to make inferences about ourselves as entities and where we stand in terms of the degrees of separation we now have from Kevin Bacon. Now, you've heard us use the term entities quite a few times here. And again, just to level set what we mean by this, an entity is a thing or concept with specific attributes and relationships to other entities. So if you've got a product page with a t-shirt, it might have attributes like size and color, and it might have a seller relationship to an organization, which would be considered a separate entity. And you've probably heard the term entity in the context of entity SEO, or maybe entity linking. And entity linking is the process of identifying the entities mentioned in your content and connecting them to corresponding entities elsewhere on the web. So when I mentioned kind of connecting to external things, this is what I mean. And the example you're looking at here is that we have called out knowledge graph as a thing that has been defined on within Google's own knowledge graph, as well as within Wikipedia and Wikidata. And we can connect that using the same as property to let all of the machines consuming our structured data know exactly what we mean when we're talking about knowledge graphs within our own content knowledge graph. And this is a super powerful entity SEO tactic. So this is a service that we provide, and Brightview Senior Living is one of our clients who had great success using this to call out locations, so areas that they serve. Locations are notoriously messy. Like just here in Ontario, we have a London, we have a Paris, we have a Waterloo. And so being able to clearly articulate which of those you mean is really helpful for machines to disambiguate, to deeply understand this. Semantic clarity, hold on to that key term. So Brightview Senior Living actually found a 25% increase in clicks and a 30% increase in impressions for non-branded queries within months of strengthening their entity linking coverage, particularly for calling out locations. And in InSinkErator's case, they actually used this on their product pages to call out information about the brands or products that they were selling. And they saw a 69% increase in clicks and a 116% increase in impressions, again, for non-branded queries, but this time product related. Now, entity linking, yes, fantastic SEO tactic, but more than that, it is essential to building a highly descriptive and therefore higher quality content knowledge graph. And that's exactly why Schema App has built our Entity Hub. An Entity Hub is a powerful entity optimization solution that enables you to build a high quality, reusable content knowledge graph that will set you up for success in terms of SEO, but also will surface information and insights about your content and prepare you for the future of search, the future of these AI applications and agents that are just on the horizon. So let's take you through what this process looks like. So here at Schema App, we'll start with running entity linking. So we'll identify the entities within your content, link those to those authoritative sources, but we can also identify your internal entities that you've already defined on your own web pages that you own to make sure that your knowledge graph is highly connected and highly descriptive. After this, we'll take you through a content audit, or an entity audit, really. So we provide entity reports, which will show you which entities have been identified and where, and can also be really helpful for surfacing content opportunities, making sure that you have the kind of coverage you would expect for the entities that are most important to you. Next, optimization. So we all know, as we're interacting with the web and interacting with data on a regular basis, how important data quality is and the significance of having a human in the loop. So our Entity Manager tool empowers you to ensure that your entities are accurate, consistent, and brand aligned. So you can go in and make edits to names, categorizations, relationships that have been declared with those other sources. And then we'll pair all of this great optimized entity data with your Google Search Analytics performance data within that Entity Performance Analytics tool to measure the real-world impact of your optimized entities within search. So really, this is all about supporting you in curating your entities, which allows you to control the narrative. We've already taken you through how that drives results. That's fantastic. But almost more importantly than that, it mitigates the risk of being misunderstood and ensures that your content and the way it's understood by machines aligns with your brand. So our own CTO, Mark Van Berkel, would be the first to tell you that knowledge graphs are no longer a nice to have. They are becoming a foundational layer for trustworthy AI. And so that's why this is so essential to AI and agent readiness. And Mark is going to take us through how we get there now.
Thanks, Jasmine. So what's required for agent readiness? This is the question I've been wrestling with this year, and it's been really interesting to see how a great data layer is really a foundation of your agent stack. So let's get into it. So there are three big requirements for agent readiness. The first one is really around your high quality knowledge graph. So we've talked about that. It needs to be accessible, correct, and complete. And secondarily, we need some agentic entry points. So some ways in which the agents can engage with your things, not just reading the things. And then third is around AI governance. Get these three pillars right, and you're effectively set up for an agentic future. So we're entering this phase now where AI systems can take actions and not just return answers. Browsers are becoming an automation layer, and websites become, for us, in our mind, for your marketing teams, a data source and an API, not simply just a destination for clicking through. It means your content must be machine readable, actionable, governed. And publishing this content today, not only for human readers, but also for the AI, allows you to set yourself up nicely. So I like to use this simple Venn diagram to explain this intersection of readiness. So knowledge graph, that's your canonical meaning layer. In your agentic entry points, that's all of the actions in which you can take with engaging in your company in a ways that agents can call. I think governance, though, it's really an important element for your broader organization. The legal and risk teams, certainly, they want to make sure that you can have trust, you have accuracy in your answers, you have compliance standards and open standards that help kind of bring everything together. The organizations who can operationalize all of these things will be ready for the agentic web. So how can agents talk to your data? There are two now open, credible standards for connecting to your data from agents. So first one's around model context protocol. This is like a USB, like a universal USB port for agents to request structured data and actions. It was invented, I can hardly believe, less than 12 months ago. But OpenAI got on the bandwagon in April, so did Google, introduced by Anthropic in the beginning. But many of them are coming together to allow for this many agents to integrate through this sort of reusable protocol. The second one is Microsoft's NLWeb, as Martha has mentioned. It's an open source toolkit to help turn your site into a conversational interface with an AI-powered application behind. And it itself actually runs an MCP server in its background. So just as you made HTML visible to humans, MCP and NLWeb would make your site visible to agents. This is where agent ready stops being a theory and becomes real infrastructure. Let's break down a few progressive capabilities. So we've talked first around the schema markup. Your content is really your optimization stack. So this is your high quality web content. This really forms the foundation. Secondarily, the content knowledge graph. So this is when we start tying together these interconnected entities across your website. Enriching and curating them makes them interconnected and makes you have high quality data layers so that your AI has something to base its answers off of. The third one is around an agentic access layer. And in here, we're talking about securely exposing your AI to a platform or to an access pattern that's secure, governed, and ready to go with MCP, but with securely. And then fourthly, having those things in place, you can get accurate answers, you can control your presence and how things are responded to, what things are available to them, and you reduce the hallucinations and misinterpretation. The same data, it's worth reminding that your human users are looking at with SEO, or can also be reused for your agentic AI outcomes. I have this diagram where I wanted to talk you through a little bit of conceptually how this is working. So this is kind of the baseline. If you do nothing, this is how it works. So you're a user agent, a person might be on the right-hand side in their browser. They might go directly to Google or to Bing's index that powers a whole bunch of other search engines and tools. These will help you define your website content. So they have a nice quality index. Similarly, though, they might be using these agentic front ends. So put in a few in for examples, as in ChatGPT, their agent, or Microsoft's Copilot or Gemini. They have a runtime layer that helps to take your queries, your questions, all of the input, looks at the tools that are available, and it will go through its built-in tool. And maybe it will go to your website, but often if it's searching the web, it's reusing other search indexes. Some indications say that ChatGPT is using Google, some say it's using Bing. It's one or the other, really. But what's interesting though here is that this is fragile. Like nothing of this is in your control, and so they're going to take action with whatever they find. So a next kind of evolution to this would be to look down the left-hand side here with the published integrations and user tools and an MCP server. If you begin to define how agents should interact with your site, and then you can publish those integrations or with user tools to route into your servers, your content knowledge graph becomes the authoritative source behind the server. You see this with published integrations such as ChatGPT apps or the Google AI Studio apps. Those are kinds of ways in which you could actually publish and integrate into the agentic runtime layer through something that you would control. Similarly, the user tools, individuals are publishing their own GPTs or their custom connectors, and they can use those to route to your MCP server. So if you have something available, this is a reusable way for you to kind of engage in that agentic web and that runtime layer to help you kind of keep control. There's a third sort of toolkit in here, which is the NLWeb. NLWeb has the conversational interface built in. So rather than going to necessarily just the agentic front ends from the big tech companies, you can own that conversational UI too. And it's also interconnected in its backend with an MCP server. So in truer form, you don't really need the extra one. So you could actually have this kind of as an integrated stack, which gives you a way to kind of control how that same website content is elevated and integrated into the stack. In this case, like the agents don't have to guess. They can follow your instructions. They can follow your things that you have guided the tools to be, and it really really opens you up to kind of to new surface areas to help you to repurpose your assets and give you some more control. The next kind of pillar or part of the circle in the Venn diagram is around governance. So the question isn't like, can AI answer? Well, the AI will almost always answer, even if it's just guessing. But the question that we want to know is, can you trust what it answered? And without governance, it's hard to audit anything. It's hard to defend the answers. And it's hard to really operationalize like the AI safety protocols that you need. And these things are foundational for enterprise. Gartner puts it well that CIOs are hitting a wall with AI because they don't have a trusted data foundation. They're improvising with LLMs instead of grounding them. Schema App gives you exactly what Gartner is screaming for: more governance, data literacy, and collaboration around that structured meaning, that data layer, the knowledge graph. This one's blunt. Most AI vendors are duct taping solutions together. One of the benefits of working with enterprise and semantic technologies, as we have for quite a few years, that we're already aligned with standards. MCP, NLWeb, RDF, which is the resource description framework, or the provenance ontology. we'll get into those just a bit more later. But these things will help define the next decade of intelligence systems. This means that your investment can compound and it's not going to be a fleeting kind of temporary. And I think actually Dave McComb talks about the data-centric architecture where these applications are going to come and go, but your data is forever. So let's get your data right. First step with trust. Trust really means like that your website content schema markup is an authoritative semantic source. You have verified entities to eliminate misinterpretation. Your brand meaning stays consistent across all of your AI touchpoints, and agents can start from your facts and not from assumptions. AI should represent your brand accurately because it's built on those governed, unambiguous sources of truth. Accuracy, meanwhile, is just the measurable output. Like, given that you have data, does the AI get it right? Is it grounding in such a way that is reducing the hallucinations? Or is it able to give you explainability and like deterministic results, like to be able to repeat the same questions and same answers? The research is actually clear and around knowledge graphs. John Snow Labs, as one example, grounds their answers with a knowledge graph. We're achieving 91% accuracy versus the baseline of 43%. And with us at Schema App, we'll give you the infrastructure to ground everything you publish. There's lots more research around knowledge graphs. As Aura Lasla points out on LinkedIn, he says that he was mentioned earlier, he's one of the semantic web kind of founders. And hallucinations aren't bugs, they're features. So like that's a built-in pattern in which AI is really kind of created. The evidence could be stronger. So what can we do about that? Well, we need to ground it. We can use knowledge graphs to help reduce the hallucinations and increase accuracy across many different facets. So these studies show 300% accuracy gains. The data.world are really foundational one, comparing answers from relational databases to a knowledge graph, and it's pretty incredible. You also see faster resolution, better reasoning, lower error rates, and the pattern is, to me, is obvious because of those properties. So all of those those properties between nodes, between Martha and the car and the movie, all those properties are really where those are not they're actually not in relational tabled structures. So this is a real key feature of semantic technologies, is those relationships. It really creates the fabric to keep everything together, keep everything in context, and especially important for more complex queries that are trying to go across many kinds of information. Third, we provide compliance in our AI systems. Schema App is now SOC 2 certified, which is great. This is just a month ago, so we'll say it again. Secondarily, to us, there's a data provenance is really important, and there's an interesting capability to help you provide full traceability, so you can ask, where did that fact come from, and from when, and how, and which version? Like, you can give like really down into how the data was sourced, and that's a really key capability for auditability. Moreover, NLWeb and MCP can be made to have inspectable calls and audit logs, so you can really defend like why an AI answer gave what it did instead of just shrugging. Even if you don't fancy these things, your legal and risk team will probably thank you. A third element is around open standards. So what's been important to us for a long time is to help to avoid being locked into a proprietary AI stack. And I know it's a bit rich coming from me, but what's really important is you own the data. It's your data, it's your knowledge graph. And with Schema App, your knowledge graph is built on open standards such as RDF and schema.org, which means it's universally machine readable. The universal resource indicators are there for a reason. So Pravo is another kind of way of talking about this data origination. And MCP is itself an open standard, open recommendation, and a protocol. NLWeb is itself open source, and these are allowing you to kind of create this durable, kind of interoperable, portable toolkit that, that allows you to help set up your agentic ecosystem. Now, this is the agentic entry points, and this is really where the rubber meets the road. So today, the AI tools that we showed in the diagram earlier, they're hitting your website, they're looking at your content, and that's it. Like they're just looking at that content surface layer. But agents can do more. They can take actions. They're going to start to engage in your business, with your business, to the extent that you are ready. So the key actions, so if you're looking to book, like have your end users to be able to book something or to buy something, apply for a loan or whatever the case may be, or request an appointment, all those things, those are key actions that come from you and your business. And each of those require sort of the inputs, like what information must the agent provide to your business? And it's really a partnership with your IT. I mean, this is a more, as those agents are going to go down funnel and take more actions with your business, maybe it's your IT or your service teams, will allow you to give kind of the rules, what kind of things must be provided, the success or failure conditions. So it's kind of an interesting kind of down funnel partnership with the organization that the marketing teams are working with. And then the fourth, it's actually a really important one, a registry. So there are a number of registries popping up. So think of this as like the source of truth for all of the actions, all those different capabilities that you want AI to be able to take. They need to be registered somewhere, whether it be with ChatGPT or in other kind of places. All of the big cloud providers are now supporting your registry in one way or another. And they may call it something else. Maybe it's not called a registry, but it's just still a list of all of those actions you can take. NLWeb in particular has its own tool registration method, and you can even define those tools in its own internal registry. And if you don't define your entry points, the agents are just going to guess, or they're just not going to be able to go down and kind of take that further action, that call to action. And really that's the goal of a lot of our websites, is to help kind of fulfill those. And if you don't give them those entry points, they're going to guess at them, and I'm going to say that they're probably going to get them wrong, or they're just not even going to know that those capabilities exist. To recap, an agent readiness is a combination of a complete knowledge graph that's correct, a registry of agentic actions, and built on a trusted, accurate, compliant, and open protocol, so that you are going to be well positioned for an AI ready tomorrow.
All right. So what next? Thanks so much, Mark. We're going to get into questions. So if you have questions, put them in. I'll just kind of wrap us up. So what do we need to do next as marketers, right? We need to kind of think about that foundation, making sure we have coverage, that depth and breadth that Jasmine talked about. Make sure that we're defining those relationships, since that seems to be like one of the powerful, what makes sort of schema markup so powerful as we kind of augment it to the data layer. You want to tune and manage and curate your knowledge graph. This means like managing your entities, taking control of that. And then finally, the last piece is around sort of exposing your graph safely, right, with governance, and thinking about whether that be sort of integrating through an MCP server, or perhaps exploring NLWeb in order to kind of reuse that graph in really interesting ways. Now, of course, this is everything that we love to do every day at Schema App. And because we're most passionate about like unlocking these areas of values and outcomes around SEO, AI and assistance, sort of getting the right answer, getting you insights in what entities you're not an authority on today, but want to be. And then also, again, sort of enabling your IT and operations, like to have that robust data layer. And so again, we think of it as this value house, right? SEO, content, and AI innovation. And speaking of innovation, like that's something we're really committed to. It's something that I would say like our part of our why when Mark and I started Schema App. And so we'll continue to innovate. We'll continue to sort of draw you forward. For those of you that work with us, thank you. We're excited to continue to partner with you. And for those of you that want to innovate more and be a lead user, we'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. So while we go into questions, if you do want to learn more, the team shared a ton of different resources on our website. We love educating people about this. Feel free also to download our Mastering AI Search, our Essentials Strategies and Insights ebook. And without further ado, we're going to jump into some questions. There's one, Mark, I wanted to kind of start with you, which is from Will here is, could an agentic action on a website be submitting a contact form to the sales team?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I kind of joke that it would be, how do we get to a point where a sales form that someone is trying to evaluate your product is filled out and into your CRM and right into your Salesforce or your HubSpot, whatever you are working on the sales side? Absolutely. That's like the most sort of obvious use case. So that would be a great one.
I love this one from Justin, though, that kind of builds on that, which is like, I'm interested in knowing if anyone's heard how CAPTCHA will evolve to allow AI agents to submit form options on behalf of their users without allowing spam. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I'm not 100% sure, but what I'm thinking first is like if you're registered in like a ChatGPT or Google Gemini, you're creating a handshake between you and that entry point. So there needs to be some sort of authentication that would happen in the middle of that. If we're talking more open-ended, that would be harder. Yeah, so that would be
Okay.
a good question.
All right, I have one more for you, Mark, and then Jasmine, I'm going to go over to you for a couple product questions. Where does organization taxonomy fit in?
I think organization taxonomy, there's two ways I can answer that. One's in the domain of Jasmine. So the taxonomy, your organization may have a taxonomy of terms for all of your topics and how your topics are and your entities are rolled up in certain topic areas or topic models. So that's the topic models is really a taxonomy. And so that's giving you kind of a way of organizing your entities. I hope that's what you're asking about. But for agentic purposes, you can use MCP and you can use some of these other backend services to understand, like, well, what are the things that are being asked of, like what are the responses, and for those responses, what kind of concepts are in there of in what kind of topic area. So you can kind of use taxonomies in there, but it also helps with sharpening your quality of the answers and the data that's going to be coming back to the agent's front ends in the first place.
Jasmine, I know you've been a lot of thinking on taxonomy and also on sort of entity management and visualizations. Anything you want to add?
Oh yeah. When we've been taking people through, learning schema.org, you're learning a vocabulary that's being given to you. When we're surfacing entities, again, we're surfacing entities that have been identified and defined elsewhere. And so by pulling in your taxonomy, it allows you to also interact with and understand this data using the language of your organization. So you can almost think of it as like a translation layer that is specifically for you and your organization. And it fits into the Entity Hub experience by kind of adding an additional facet for understanding clusters of those entities. So you might have a topic like artificial intelligence, but that would encapsulate things like Gemini and ChatGPT and AI governance and all of these other concepts or entities that are important to understand on a granular level, but also significant in like a cluster altogether as well.
All right, we have a couple of quick ones I'll just address. Does Schema App work with WordPress? Yes, we can integrate with any CMS. On leadership bios, is it important to include photos? I think you want to be as descriptive as possible. So adding a photo is helpful, sort of if you want to control that one. All right, let's finish on one that's a hot topic from Victor. At some point, can you talk about the issue of using Google Tag Manager for schema implementations and how that impacts AI apps like ChatGPT and others? Mark, do you want to take point on that one?
Yeah, this is really to do with whether or not those tools are rendering JavaScript, and it's a mixed bag. So we would prefer to see all of the markup delivered server side. So if you are on WordPress, that has the capability to kind of include your schema markup server side, as does Drupal or AEM. And because it's expensive to render JavaScript, especially for the whole internet, and that's why it took Microsoft many years to kind of come along and get on board. And they do that with Bing. Google does that for many years. It's going to set the standard. But typically, it's still the same sort of pattern of like making your content as dynamic accessible to the search engines. So the same thing as with Microsoft and Bing in like 2022, roughly, is now what we're seeing with ChatGPT and Perplexity and some of these other ones. If they're not written in JavaScript, you want to make it more accessible. So it is better. You're going to have more accessibility, of course, if you are avoiding a tag manager or JavaScript. But it does depend on the specific tool, and there are different tools, and they're changing every month. So it's kind of a mixed answer, but server size preferred.
Yeah, and something Schema App's looking at. So we're looking at an integration with Akamai and sort of other CDNs to kind of help solve this problem. So this is again part of our innovation promise that, as we see the landscape evolve, we'll evolve with it. Thanks everyone for joining today. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jasmine. Hope you learned something new and look forward to continuing the conversation. Have a great day.